Can animals get coronavirus? The short answer is yes, but there is no evidence showing that domestic animals like cats and dogs, livestock like pigs and cows, and most wild animals like tigers can transmit the virus that causes COVID-19 to humans. Now, wait a minute, you might be thinking, didn't COVID-19 come from animals? Yes, scientists know that the virus causing COVID-19 originated in bats, but they don't know much beyond that. All they really have are educated guesses. There are no documented cases of a bat giving a human any kind of coronavirus. One of the theories as to what happened is that there was an intermediate host, an animal that a bat somehow gave the virus that causes COVID-19 to, and then that host somehow exposed a human to it. There have been theories circulating the internet on what kind of animal this might have been, but there's really no way to know, and we might never know. The SARS outbreak in 2002 was actually also originated in a bat. It was a bat that infected a cat-like creature called a civet, and that then got passed to humans. Another theory is that a non-pathogenic, meaning a non-disease causing form of the virus jumped from animals to humans, and then within humans it evolved into its current pathogenic state. While COVID-19 did likely emerge from an animal source, it does not mean that animals easily spread this disease. So what does all of this mean for pet owners? There have been reports all over the country of an increased number of dogs and cats being surrendered to shelters. People are scared. It's scary when you see an article about a dog in China that tested positive for COVID-19. It's scary when you see a headline saying that cats can spread coronavirus. You have to remember, if animals could easily give mutated viruses to humans, there would be a lot more pandemics. There have been no reports of cats or dogs, or any domestic pet for that matter, testing positive for COVID-19 in the United States. The only reports that we have around pets getting COVID-19 come from other countries. So the way that they test for COVID-19 in animals is similar to that of humans. They use what's called a PCR test, which is looking for fragments of the virus's RNA. If you remember from biology class, RNA is similar to DNA. Another kind of testing called serology, or a serum test, is looking to see if your body made antibodies to fight off the virus. Meanwhile, there have been labs evaluating thousands and thousands of samples from cats and dogs all across the world, and they have not found a single positive test. In cases where these isolated incidents where animals did test positive, not a ton is known about the tests themselves, the testing environment, how well controlled it was. Every case where a cat or dog has tested positive, which again are very few, they have been living in close contact with someone who had COVID-19. Now, among the pets that made the news for testing positive, there was a 17-year-old Pomeranian dog in Hong Kong that tested positive for COVID-19. It tested positive both on a PCR test, meaning that they detected some RNA from the virus, and a serology test, meaning that its body had produced some antibodies. When they performed what's called virus isolation, there were no living samples of the virus in any of the samples from the dog that they had. There was also a German Shepherd in Hong Kong that tested positive in all three forms of testing, meaning a PCR test, a serology test, and virus isolation. However, a second German Shepherd that lived in the same household continually tested negative. There were also some reports of pet cats testing positive. There was a cat in Belgium as well as a cat in Hong Kong. There have been some studies looking at whether or not certain animals can get SARS-CoV-2, but it's important to remember that these have been very small studies and things are happening very quickly right now, as with all research. So of all the animals that they studied, cats and ferrets are both susceptible to getting the SARS-CoV-2 virus. However, this does not mean that they can spread it to a human. In these lab studies where they were testing to see if cats and ferrets can get COVID-19, they are essentially exposing them to a really high amount of the virus, much higher than they would probably encounter in a natural setting. They spray the virus up these animals' noses and kind of wait to see if they get infected, and then test various bodily fluids and parts of their bodies for the virus. And the cats did test positive. They then put them together to see if cats could spread it from one cat to another, and they found that yes, cats were able to infect other cats through respiratory droplets and similar mechanisms to the way that humans infect one another. There was no evidence that cats shed the virus, meaning they do not shed SARS-CoV-2 viruses out in the environment around them that other humans are able to get. The only way it was spread from cat to cat was through respiratory droplets like a sneeze or a lick or what have you. Like cats, ferrets are also able to get the SARS-CoV-2 virus. However, there's no evidence that they can spread it to humans. There have been 0 cases, whether in a lab or not, of livestock testing positive. Pigs, chickens, cows, no animals like that have been shown to get it or spread it. In dogs that have been infected in a laboratory setting, they did detect some of the virus's RNA in certain samples from them, but they did not find any evidence of the virus being in their tissue. The dogs did not display symptoms, and the dogs did not none of the samples that they obtained were an infectious version of the virus, meaning that even though it was technically in their bodies, it could not have infected someone and was not causing any symptoms in the dog. There was a tiger that tested positive for COVID-19 at the Bronx Zoo in New York. There were 3 other tigers there and 3 lions that went on to show symptoms of a respiratory illness. They did not test all of them, but believe that they do have COVID-19. They're pretty positive that these animals got it from a zookeeper who had COVID-19 but was asymptomatic, so he was working closely with them and shedding the virus, exposing them to it. Interestingly, none of the other cats at the zoo, leopards, cheetahs, pumas, nothing like that, have showed any symptoms. All of the cats are expected to make a full recovery. These big cats are and remain the only animals that have tested positive for COVID-19 in the United States. In cats, the cells that line their respiratory tract, the cells that are in their lungs, have a similar type of protein on them as humans. It's called an ACE2 protein, and the SARS-CoV-2 virus likes to bind to that protein, and then it gets access to your respiratory system and infects you that way. So both cats and ferrets have respiratory cells that have similar ACE2 proteins as humans do, and that's why they believe they're more susceptible to getting the virus. The American Veterinary Medical Association has obviously been closely following research around COVID-19 in animals. Their guidelines still say that there is no evidence that animals pose a risk to humans in any way when it comes to COVID-19. There's no evidence that they can spread it to a human. Getting the virus in the real world is really different than getting it in a lab. If this were something that were easily shared between humans and animals, we would almost undoubtedly be seeing much higher instances of people reporting their pets being sick or somehow impacted. There are a number of studies underway at the moment looking at the impact of COVID-19 in animals. But the main takeaway is that there is really no evidence to show that you could get COVID-19 from an animal. What the CDC is recommending when it comes to animals, whether they're pets or not, is if you or someone in your household does test positive for COVID-19 or suspects that you might have it, treat the animal like a human. Don't spend a bunch of time around them. Don't let them lick your face. Don't share bedding or food or anything like that. If possible, you should have another member of your household take care of the pet, do things like feeding, that sort of thing. If you have a service animal that you rely on, the CDC says that you can wear a mask when you're interacting with the animal. You can also do things like avoid sharing food, try not to pet it or hug it or kiss it. You should wash your hands before and after any contact with your pet or service animal. Again, this is only if you are COVID-19 positive or believe that you have it. And this is all just out of an abundance of caution. They're still learning a lot about this virus and what it does, but there are 0 reports of any animal dying from this disease. There have not been any studies looking at whether or not the SARS-CoV-2 virus could be transmitted on an animal, like in their fur or on their skin. There was a very small study that looked to see if the virus can survive on pig skin, which it did in a phosphate buffered saline solution for 24 hours. As with everything else at this time, it's just important to practice caution and common sense. So keep washing your hands. If your pet has been around someone with COVID-19, you should probably wash them just to be safe, things like that. But there's no evidence that in the current outbreak, animals have played a role in spreading it. This is a human outbreak that is driven by human-to-human contact and spreading.